welcome to You Are Loved. I am your host, Sarah McCormick, and I am so glad that you're here today. So, last week we talked about Jeremiah 29:11, and I wanted to keep talking about it. So, we went over the context of the verse and where it came from, and that it was something that the Lord had said to those who were exiled to Babylon, that they were going to be exiled for 70 years, but then after that, he was going to welcome them back, and that he knew the plans that he had for them, and that they weren't to hurt them, but to make them prosper and give them hope for a future. So I talked about how I first came across the verse and how it applied perfectly to what was going on in my life. And for 2019, I decided that that was going to be my verse for the year. That anytime something happened, I was going to remind myself that God has a plan for my life and he wants me to succeed, and he's not doing it to make me fail. And then 2020 happened, and again, that was my verse for the year, was that no matter what bad things were happening in the world and no matter what was happening to us, was that God wanted good for us, and that no matter what was going on, he had a plan, and the plan was good. It was going to end with good. It was going to prosper us, and it was going to give us hope and a future. And then 2021 happened. And then in the beginning of 2021, he was medically disqualified from his job for 5 weeks. And that meant for 5 weeks, we didn't get paid. That was the beginning of January. No, that was the end of January through the beginning of March. But God showed us that he was there for us. Luckily, my husband gets paid 2 weeks behind. So usually there's a week buffer in there when you get paid. At least in my job, there was a week buffer where you would work 2 weeks and then you would get paid the following Friday. Well, for my husband, you worked 2 weeks and then you didn't get paid the following Friday, but the Friday after that. So they were always 2 weeks behind, which was good because he was out for 2 weeks and still got paid that Friday. So it wasn't until we were 3 weeks into him not working that we weren't getting any money. And it just so happened that during that time, when he wasn't getting paid and when he wasn't getting a paycheck because he was 3 weeks in, we got our stimulus. And that helped us. And after the stimulus, we got our tax refund, which helped us. And if he would have been put out on medical at any other time, those two things wouldn't have been there to help us. We did ask my parents for money because there was about a week in there that we didn't get anything and we needed to pay our bills before the stimulus hit and our tax refund hit. But it was only one pay that we had to ask for out of the entire 5 weeks that he was out. And my husband and I looked at each other and we said, oh my gosh, he provided for us. This was the best time to be put out on medical leave. So he was put out on medical leave. And he worked to get reinstated at work, and he was reinstated. And they moved him to patrol. And he hadn't been in patrol for 3-4 years. And he didn't want to be in patrol because he had seen a lot. And he goes, I don't want to see dead people anymore, which is usually what you see when you deal with trains. So he was moved down to Wilmington and on patrol. And his second day of work, he injured himself while trying to arrest someone. And he didn't realize he injured himself that night. It wasn't until he got up the next morning and he goes, my shoulder's kind of sore. because you don't always feel an injury right away because your adrenaline's pumping and you just don't feel things. So he goes into work the next day and files an injury on duty report just to be safe. So he goes and he takes Wednesday off and he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, I need to send you to a specialist. So it's a couple weeks till he can get in with a specialist. But essentially, what ends up happening is he is out during that time and not getting paid because he had used up all of his sick time because they took forever to approve his IOD. So then there's that's going on that, we have to work with the union to get his payback. And they filed a grievance and they said that his IOD should have been approved because he got injured while he was working and all of this stuff. And we get a phone call from the union VP for the division in June saying, okay, they're going to reinstate your time. You're going to get your sick time back and you're going to get paid for that time that you were out because it was an injury on duty and you should be paid. That was June. I'm recording this on September 15th, and he still has not been reinstated his sick time and gotten paid. So there's one thing. And then he asked for his money back for the 5 weeks that he was out because there's a provision in their contract that says that if you get a second opinion and are reinstated, then they have to make you whole again because, oops, they made a mistake. So he sent a letter requesting his 5 weeks pay that he didn't get while he was out medically disqualified. And oops. Oh, we're going to cover that time as FMLA. Okay, so since you're covering that time as FMLA, then that means that you can't move me from op support to patrol because it's not a similar job. So now we're working with the Department of Labor because they violated his FMLA rights. And then they decided to move him around. So he switched shifts and he also switched reporting locations. So as of the beginning of August, he was in Philadelphia, second shift. And they got dispatched to a call in the station, and he heard what it was, and he said, I'm going to go meet the ambulance because I've seen enough trauma in my life that I don't want to go. I'm going to stay up here. Unfortunately, God had different plans, and my husband helped load this person onto the litter and into the ambulance. So he really didn't get to avoid the situation because the situation came to him. And he had gone in early to work that day because he had to train somebody in CPR. So he was done at 8:00 and came home. And then he decided that he was going to take the following day off because he still wasn't feeling right after that. So he said, okay, that was a traumatic thing. You can take a day off. And he said that they had done something that he had never seen done before, where they actually called and had third shift come in early so that second shift could leave because it was that traumatic of an incident. So on Friday, his mom and I convince him that he needs to go back to work. So with some poking and prodding, he gets in the car, and driving to work, he has some issues because it has something to do with the drive. But when he gets to work, he's usually fine. So I talked to him on the drive in. He has me on his in-car system. And I talked to him on the way in, and he gets there and he goes, I can't go in the building. I said, what do you mean you can't go in the building? He goes, I can't go in the building. I cannot make myself get out of this car to go in the building. And I was like, just go in the building. You're fine. Just go. Just go, just go, just go. So I give the phone to his mom, and his mom goes, I really think he should come home. I've never heard him like this before. And I'm like, okay, fine. He can come home. So he comes home Friday, stays home Friday. Saturday morning, he gets up and he goes, I still feel like I can't go. I get such anxiety when I think about walking into that building. So he hadn't been sleeping well. So he goes online to see what kind of support he can get from his company, because that's always been something that we've been really big into. And especially my mom. My mom would always say, hey, your plan offers that you get 6 free sessions to talk to a therapist, use them. Or, hey, when we needed a lawyer, we could contact someone at his company and they would connect us with a lawyer and we got a discount. We got a 25% discount for using one of their contracted lawyers. So I've always been big on using services that are available to us. So he went on and he goes, I found out that I can talk to peer support. We have somebody that I can talk to about what has been going on, and they can help me formulate a plan to get back to work. Well, apparently my husband thought he had texted this person, but he didn't. And it had been about a week, and he goes, I haven't heard back from this person yet. And I'm surprised because usually they're supposed to respond within 24 hours. Just so happened that I was doing a Bible study, and one of the people that I was doing a Bible study with, she happened to be the only one who hopped onto the call. And after I went through everything that I was going to go through in that meeting, we just got to chatting, which is something that we had done before when I had held other Bible studies. And I explained what was going on with Randy and how he had reached out to somebody from the SISM team and didn't hear anything back. And she goes, well, I know they have a team there because I know one was set up because I know the person who set it up. Because this person that was at my Bible study was also on the SISM team. And she goes, just from what you're telling me, it sounds like he needs that type of support because he has seen so much trauma. So she gives me the number for Michelle, who is the person who set up the SISM team at my husband's work. And we just kind of go from there. I reach out to my friend who's a therapist and say, hey, I think my husband might be having a little bit of PTSD. Is there anyone that you recommend for him to go see who's first responder friendly, who can kind of help him work through this because he can't work through this anymore? At that same time, someone from the SISM team was holding for those who love a first responder event, and it was on Zoom. And it was a Wednesday night, and we just kind of got to talk about what was going on, and they gave us suggestions for how we can support them. And it just so happened that that event was happening right when I needed it. And we talked about different things, and she told me about how he was processing things. And being a first responder, I kind of had an idea. I know the coping mechanisms. I know everything like that. I know how you try and make it that, the people that you're working on aren't real people, because once you start thinking that they're real people, then you can't do your job anymore. And it sounds horrible, but that's how we protect ourselves. So then we're talking to Michelle, and Michelle says that, contact the manager at your work who's responsible for the SISM team. So now we got that person involved. And she said, well, you need to fill out IOD paperwork because it was an injury on duty. And now the IOD paperwork was denied. So now we're back to a position again where my husband hasn't worked for a month and he's not getting paid. He did find out that he can get paid through railroad retirement, and he submitted the paperwork for that. It won't be 100% his salary, but it's better than nothing. And he keeps just wanting to quit. He keeps saying, I think I'm just supposed to quit. And in my gut, I keep telling him, but you're not. You're not supposed to quit. There's a reason for this. He goes, but I just got beat up so much this year. Like every time I think that things are going well, they find a new and unique way to screw me over. And I said, I know. But here's the thing. You are the first person to use the SISM team at your job. Even though it's been implemented for 6 years, you are the first one to reach out and say, I want to use these services. And you did it on your own. because, there was another breakdown in the system. So, whenever there's a traumatic incident at work, the manager will send out an email to all of those who were involved, letting them know of the services in case they need to use it. Well, they go based off the incident, not the call for service. And people don't always like to do their jobs the way that they're supposed to be done. So, Randy never got that email. In fact, when he called and said he wanted help, the EAP said, "Oh, you're not on the list. We can't help you." Excuse me? I was there. I can tell you I was there. Well, you're not on the list. So problem number 1, okay? Issue number 1 that we found. Now remember, I was a business analyst. So I go through and I look through the process and see where the breakdown is. Number 1, EAP should not be telling people, "No, I'm sorry, we're not going to get you help for the traumatic experience that you experienced because you're not on the list." Totally unacceptable. Let the manager know that. The manager goes, "I'll add that to the list of other things that we need to tell EAP that they're not allowed to say to our officers when they call." The manager had him fill out IOD paperwork that got denied. And she goes, "I have a feeling this is going." She goes, "You need to fill out the IOD paperwork so that when they deny it," which to me leads me to believe that she knew it was going to get denied. Because she said something to the effect of, "We need to make sure all of our ducks are in a row." She also let him know that he was the guinea pig, the first officer to ever utilize this in the company. And so it's a learning experience for everyone. The people who approve the IOD are saying it's not a physical thing, so it doesn't meet the criteria for IOD. Where the thing that's running behind the scenes is, there's a reason that we implemented CISM here, because these people see a lot of trauma. And a while back, we saw a lot of officers taking their own lives because they didn't have a way to deal with the trauma. And we decided that that wasn't acceptable and that we need to support them to help them process their trauma so that they don't end up like that. So there's this underlying current of, you really got to be careful how you handle this, because otherwise you could be sentencing all of your officers to death by saying, "I'm sorry you're having trouble with this and you are asking for help because you have PTSD, but no, we're not going to help you." Looks really bad. And my husband gets frustrated because he's not getting paid. He doesn't know what's going to happen. He found out that if he can get an admin job, he can go back at it as an admin job and get paid, but now he's worried about going back to work because he's not sure how that is going to go. And there's just so many uncertainties, because we have come to realize that what you think is the normal course of action that 99.9% of companies would take, his company does the complete opposite. But I keep telling him, I know this is rough. I know it's frustrating. We were just talking this morning about how he was requested to reach out to the person who was originally supposed to tell him that his IOD was denied, to find out the reason why. Not just because it didn't meet the criteria, but what criteria didn't it meet? And they're just refusing to respond to him. So I said he was on vacation. Send him another email. Call the radio room. Find out how to get a hold of him so that he can tell you. Do everything in your power to make sure that you cover all of your bases, so that when you have to fight for this, you've done everything possible to make this work. So originally, when he was told to fill out the IOD paperwork, he was worried because since he worked in operations support, he knows how things go. When you fill out IOD paperwork, the sergeant has to call in and get a report so that it's documented in their report system. And usually within that report, they explain what happened. So, for example, when he was injured arresting someone, they explain what happened, and then it says, Officer McCormick suffered a shoulder injury on this date at this time, doing this action, blah, 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 and they lay it all out. Well, one of the big things that the CISM team promotes is confidentiality. And he kept saying, if I have to fill out an IOD report, then that kind of blows confidentiality out of the water. Because everybody can access that report and everybody can see that I asked for help because I'm struggling. So he worked with the manager, and the manager said, this is what I want you to write in the report. An officer suffered an injury. Tell your sergeant to put that. An officer suffered an injury. Period. End of sentence. Okay, that's what he did. An officer suffered an injury. That's all that's in the report. Nothing else. Just an officer suffered an injury. Okay, great. Awesome. Now we figured out how to do that. So we can put that in the policy, that when an officer comes to you and is suffering and needs help from the CISM team, this is what we're going to do. Well, then we found out that on the watch commander's report, they pretty much said what had happened, that it was my husband who asked for it. And I don't remember if they stated the injury or not, but in the emergency services community, people run on gossip. Luckily, my husband is not one to care what people think or say. He honestly doesn't really care if people know that he's asking for help, because he's told people he's asking for help so that they can support him. He's not ashamed of it. And I keep telling him, all of this happened because you have a purpose. You don't care if people know. You're not ashamed to tell people that you're having an issue. You're also really smart, and you know how other people are going to react to this. I said, had anyone else in that department even asked for help, they wouldn't have gotten as far as they are now. And by you being the first one, I said, you have to keep fighting, because you have to be the one to not give up. Because if you give up, then they're just going to do that to the next person and the next person and the next person. And this is something that you're not only doing for yourself, you're doing it for all of the officers that you work with. And now we're to the point where the union is fighting it. They are saying, why did you deny his IOD? That was a bad idea. We've got the manager fighting for it, saying, we implemented this because it's a good thing for our officers and we should be using it. And we've got somebody from the Montgomery County CISM team backing us up too. And I keep telling him, God never said it was going to be easy, but he chose you to be the trailblazer for this, because he knew that you would ask the right questions, and he knew that you wouldn't give up so easily, and that you would research to find out what else is available, and that you would look into the policies and procedures to see what you could do. He knew you were going to go to law school. I think that whole 5 weeks that he was medically disqualified was so that he would decide to go to law school, because now he better understands how to read things and how to implement things, and that's going to help him. For I know the plans that I have for you. For I know the plans that I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Not harm you. He's not doing this to hurt us, to give us a hope and a future. He's using you as a tool. How many times in the Bible have we seen God use his children as tools? Everywhere. And how amazing is it that God chose you to do this? Heck, he may have created you for this specific moment to save the rest of his children. Because I know from some of the things that I read about anger in the Bible that God will make his children angry to save them. And I think that's what helps get me through. As I just constantly remind him, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, to give you hope in a future. So God's not doing this to punish you. God is doing this because it needs to be done. And he knows that you're up for the challenge. It's the same with me and my children. My children are rough. They're both strong-willed. We don't have compliant children, and I keep telling myself how amazing it is that God chose me to raise them. That's an amazing job. That is something that he chose me to do this hard work. And I keep telling my husband that he chose you. He may have even set it up that we met at college because God knows that I'll keep pushing him to do what needs to be done and reminding him that he's not just doing this for himself, that he's doing it for others. But little did I know that my verse from 2019 was still going to be my verse in 2021. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And whenever I feel like giving up, and whenever I feel like the world is against me, and whenever I feel like it's not going the way that it should, and that I should just give up, I remind myself, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So if you're going through a rough time, write that verse down and read it to yourself. I have it on like everything. I have it on. It's on my desk right here on a little card that I got in my faith box. It's up on my vision board because it was the week 3 verse. I have it on a shirt. I have it on a mug. I have it on a bracelet. I have it, I think, on a journal. I just surround myself with it. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, to give you hope and a future. I made it on a sign that's hanging above our TV. That's God's promise to us. One of them. That he is for us and not against us. It may not be easy, but the reward will be worth it. If you want to talk, you can reach out to me on my many different ways that I can get in contact with you through my website, youarelovedpodcastshow.com. I'm on Facebook, Sarah McCormick 1985. On Instagram, Sarah McCormick 1985. On Twitter, at youarelovedps. One of the other things that I have set up, because I want to create an amazing community for this, I have a Patreon, patreon.com/youarelovedps. And you can sign up for the $5 level, and that gets you access to Discord. And what Discord is basically, think of it as a Facebook group where we can have different conversations going all at the same time. They're called channels, and we can have different channels about different things that are going on, different support that we need. And I've been on different Discord servers for Webtoons, and I've seen how they work, and they have different channels for the different things that everybody wants to talk about. And I think that we could really get the You Are Loved PS Discord server going as a place to support each other. And you only have access to that if I give you access to it. But one of the easiest ways to do it is to join my Patreon at $5. You get access to the episodes on Sunday instead of Thursday. And it also gives you access to the Discord server. So If you need someone to talk to, let me know, because God is for us, not against us. And I have a feeling that if you are listening to this and you want to reach out, that was God, because He knows what we need and He knows when we need it. And He will put things into our lives so that they're there when they need them. Thanks for listening.